I got to kick this thing off. Can I kick it off? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ladies and gentlemen, listen.
Hi, I'm Marika Moore, and if you want to get all up in my business, you should check out my new book, Unsolicited Marriage Advice, where I provide an analysis of the best marriage advice that I've received over the past 16 years or so. So head on over to Amazon and buy it now.
Conversate with Us Radio presents the Man Listen Show. We are the blackest radio show on the internet. We bring you our opinion on topics that affect the black community in an effort to enlighten, enrich, and empower every brother and sister that falls under the sound of our voice. We operate on a no-hating frequency, so be prepared for us to keep it 100% real and 100% black all the time. Please follow the show on Facebook and Instagram at Man Listen Show. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. Click that bell icon so you can be notified of upcoming shows. Go to the link in our bio on our Instagram, buy our merchandise, and just let everybody know about the blackest radio show on the internet, the Man Listen Show. I'm your host, Mark B. Let's bring the crew in. Shout out to C. So yeah, man. We talked about it last week, but I think it's important that we talk about it again because obviously the situation is becoming more dire. Trump has federalized DC. And so, that means he's taken over the District of Columbia's police department. National Guard is in the District of Columbia. There's all the I hate black people, like the I really hate black people states are sending National Guard to DC. I know Alabama was one of them. I think a few other southern states, maybe West Virginia. I'm not quite sure. I don't really recall. They're sending National Guard to the District of Columbia. And now Trump is doing things where they are talking about going into Chicago. Now, Lav and I talked about it on the last show. The next up is Chicago. Pretty sure New York will be coming up next, right? And there's some other things that are in play that we'll talk about during the show. But as this thing unwinds, and clearly there's an attack on black people, how are you guys seeing this play out, and what do you think we should do, or what can we do to prepare ourselves for it? Because it's easy to say that, they're going to be targeting impoverished neighborhoods where quote unquote crime is higher, but we all know that, if a certain demographic of the black community is not safe, none of us are. So when you think about what's going on in the news and what Trump and the Republicans are trying to do, how does that make you feel? And what do you think that we could do to try to circumvent what's going on?
I don't know that there's much that we can do at this late hour. I mean, I would love to say all of the things that I would do, but I was here in Ferguson when the National Guard was boots on grounds with guns pointed at us, and it wasn't nothing we could do. They was here, they was in control, they had guns, we didn't. They had authority, we didn't. And a lot of protesters are still battling lawsuits and battling criminal charges, and like a lot of times when the police during that time period would get sick of being out there with protesters, they had like tactics that they would use to basically rile up the crowd, which would then give them basically a reason to start arresting people. So they would like move in close to protesters and then like start trying to push the crowd back by pushing them forward and then like move back. It was like some weird type of thing. And then so whenever protesters respond, they just start grabbing people out the crowd and start arresting them. And when you got National Guard standing there with assault rifles, I mean, because even if you have guns, even if you have some type of protection in your house, you don't have National Guard assault rifles. You don't have National Guard training. You don't have National Guard authority. You don't have National Guard backup. So really the time to do something about this was on election day and on every other election day. And a lot of us is, I mean, I hate to say it, it's a little bit too little too late at this point. I mean, I don't really know what you could do except maybe show up to the next election, support these states like, California that's trying to fight back and, with the redistricting and all the other stuff that they're doing. But I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the other piece that you're spot on with what you're saying, but the other piece too is we've been infiltrated as well. So that's one thing that we found out, that some of the people that were quote unquote, part of the struggle or whatever, they was bought and sold, bought and paid for. So they were doing things like leading the crowds to certain areas where the police would be ready for them and inciting riots, inciting stuff to antagonize the police. So I don't know, man. We've been compromised, and those people that said Trump is just as bad as Kamala, you can see now. You notice you never hear anything from them anymore. Like they gone. All the black people that was talking about Trump this, Trump that, they don't have nothing to say. You don't see them on social media, nothing. So I don't know if they have regret or they just the check stopped coming. They were paid to do what they were doing.
Yeah, right. Like you said, or both. Could be both, right? But see, I think what's going to be interesting, like kind of like Erika said, there's not a whole lot you can do physically, right? And I've talked about this for somebody who believes in American democracy. You hope that others are of that same mindset, right? So he can go into DC because it's there's no state, it's already federal land, but he would have to have something to show is an emergency. When he went to California, he said, "Hey, we got these riots, we got this whatever." How do you get to Chicago? Without if it's just everyday life that's been going on for 50 years in Chicago, that doesn't constitute an emergency. So it's really interesting to me the legal aspect, how he would go about drumming up an emergency in a state. And I say that knowing full well that he's gonna try. It's just the legal ramifications. How does that play out? And then also, I do think he says a lot of stuff and does a lot of stuff just to get people riled up, right? Knowing full and damn well he's not going to do what he says he's going to do, or he just, because he just likes the attention. He likes to cause outrage sometimes.
I don't know, bro. I think he's gonna do this, man. Because I think the piece that people are sleeping on is that the courts are behind him. I mean, thank God, Biden. I mean, Obama did what he could do, but Biden put a lot of people, judges, on the bench for the federal courts, and that's been somewhat of a delay for some of the things that have been happening, right? But when you got the highest court in the land, that's basically, listen, giving them carte blanche. He pretty much can do what he wants to do.
I mean, that's been his thing this whole presidency anyway, is challenging the judiciary to see, exactly what they would let him get away with, whether with just outright defying them or with, just making them, the people that he basically supported and supported him stay on his side. Like, do you want to stay on my good side? Or, you know what I mean? Or either way, he's like, I'm going to do what I want to do either way. So either you could ride with me or I'm going to just, because
Get down
all
the
that stuff with
laydown.
immigration, he just did whatever he wanted to do.
Yeah, I think what they said in DC, they had a huge uptick in ICE arrest, and they say crime has been down moderately. I was in DC last week, and I didn't see the National Guard. I saw police presence on some corners, but I was like in the U Street area. I wasn't in the neighborhoods that they would say that, high crime is taking place. But when you talk to DC residents, they say they're not going to the places that may need that type of intervention. They're only in certain places. So, I don't know, but it's clear that there's an attack on Black people. I mean, you look at, I'm not sure if it was just government jobs. I think it was government jobs, but 300,000 Black women have lost their jobs. Who's the one demographic that fucking hates the Republicans, hates Trump? That's retribution right there. And Arika, you could talk about this. He just signed an executive order where they're getting rid of the cashless bail system in DC. Now they have the authority to do that, and he said they're going to try to expand that across the nation. But what does that mean? Because like you've dealt with this, firsthand. What does that mean when they're taking away the cashless bail system? How does that impact Black people?
Well, it depends on how you do it anyway, but a lot of times, really, especially for really high bonds, they want you to put up some type of collateral. And if we don't have any collateral, we don't have houses and deeds and, or, 401ks that we can hit up, we're not going to be able to readily access that money. And then they're supposed to be, and every state does it differently, but they're supposed to be basically a balance of interest. So the public interest, safety of the public versus, is monetary restrictions important here, or is it necessary? Because if I've never missed a court date, then you can't say that there's a reason to believe that I won't appear in court. So that's one of like the main things they have to look at. Or if I don't have a criminal record, then there's no reason for me to stay in jail or to have a real high bond. Like, why do you need this money if I've never done anything wrong? So the chances of me, you know what I mean, not trying to show up in court and prove myself is pretty low. But if you start putting in judges that are making these discretionary decisions, and they're making discretionary decisions about people who are already disenfranchised, and you start giving them, means with like the cashier's bond and whatnot to make it even more restrictive. Even if you do grant the bond, now you don't have the means to, even come up with whatever monetary amount they put on it. It's just another tool that's one of those subtle things, like, the voting tests and all the other things, or going from slavery to the jail system. It's all those subtle shifts that people don't necessarily understand what's happening until the impact is seen. So who knows? Nationwide, that's going to be hard to do because you can't get every state to just say, "Oh, we can do this," because we have our own constitutions. So to have them go against their constitution, you have to vote on that.
It straight reminds
Unless
me
they
of
start
convict leasing.
earmarking money. Hmm?
It's straight convict leasing.
Hmm.
And we know how that played out in North County and St. Louis and what those little small municipalities were doing to Black people in St. Louis. And, Lab and I got into a disagreement on the last show about Obama, right, and some of his actions. But I feel like I've always been fair and said, Obama did do some good things for us. And a lot of that was the work that he had Eric Holder doing, Attorney General Eric Holder doing with the consent decrees, investigating Cleveland, St. Louis, those other cities that were targeting Black people, and they were putting a stop to a lot of those practices.
Hmm.
But we see now this is like a hey, listen, we need to take our power back, and they're trying to take that and some.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is the power has and will always be in the zoning and the districting, because the more representatives they're able to have, the more control they're able to have. And that's why he's like outright trying to get them to get these districts rezoned or whatever so that he can get more Republican votes. But again, if we're not out here voting, we're not putting the right people in place. I mean, we already losing anyway. And people just don't understand how important it is to vote in local elections. We sit here and say, well, Trump, I didn't vote for him. So, but yeah, but you might have voted for the person that's in there, ratifying what it is he's doing, the person in the House or in the Senate that is approving the nonsense that he's doing. So, I mean, until we start educating people at a more fundamental level about how important the districts and voting and stuff is, I don't know how we're going to pull ourselves out of this pit we're in, because the pit's getting deeper.
And I feel you, but I'm still an election denier. I still feel they stole it, and I'm gonna maintain that. I'm gonna maintain
Me
it.
too. Me too. You
Yeah,
know,
but
if you ever notice a lot of stuff that he says, he accuses other people of doing and stuff that he absolutely does, right? So to shift the blame from himself. So the red herring for me on the election denial is now they're trying to get rid of mail-in ballots, right?
Mhm.
So the mail-in ballots leave a paper trail. So I can always go back and hand manually count those things, right? When you do it all by electronically, there's no, how are you going to dispute? Because I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't recall ever getting a slip showing exactly who I voted for on the electronic machine. So I can't go back and say, see here, we can get everybody's paper and then do a hand count that way. There's a receipt you get, but it doesn't actually show who you voted for. So it's just basically confirmation that you voted,
Right.
and there's some kind of something you can decipher. But without the actual paper trail, a hand recount is not possible.
But also, our voting system is archaic for a reason. The more archaic it is, the more control they have over it. We've been able to upgrade all these other systems and do all these other things. Why can't I vote with my social security number electronically? Why I got to stand in a line between 7 and 7? Why I got to miss work? Why I
It's
got to,
rampant fraud with social security numbers. I'm not trying to be funny, but I just remember when I worked for a public utility company, there was in the Midwest, the city, not a large city, but it was just a whole lot of fraudulent social security numbers, which they were illegal immigrants that were using to set up service and gain access to service and stuff like that. That's why. So.
well, but I'm saying, even if there's information about that, there has to be another way.
No, there should be, yeah. If it's to me, if you're going to get rid of the absentee or mail-in voting, then there has to be something that accompanies that, whether it means school's out, it's a federal holiday, is something, because there are a lot of people that literally that's the only way I can vote. People who travel for work and they might be gone for weeks at a time, or they have to work. Somebody got to work at Quick Trip, right? Some Quick Trip still open on election day, so somebody got to work at Quick Trip. Somebody got to work at Kroger or whatever. So until they get that nipped in the bud, then there's really no way to say, hey, you have to go on site to vote.
And the military.
Yeah, military too. Yeah. Honestly, all the representatives, a lot of them aren't at home when it's voting time, so.
Right.
Yeah. I think that you all make good points. You saw what happened with the Democrats in Texas. Lav and I talked about that, and we say, hey, they can't hold out forever. But basically, they were just like, hey, look, if y'all want to file a lawsuit, y'all got to come back, right? And so a couple of them came back, with the rest of like, nah, we ain't falling for that. And as soon as they came back, they put the police on them. They got the quorum, and they was able to redistrict. Now, the thing about it, inept white men, what they did was they changed solidly red districts to light red. So they put themselves at some risk, right? They put themselves at some risk, but still. And what I found was that the Democratic states like California, they put it to where it's an independent commission that needs to switch things around. Now, the Republicans don't care. They'd be like, well, shit, we're going to fire whoever's in charge of that commission until they do what we want them to do. Right? I don't know if the Democrats got nuts like that. We hope Gavin Newsom does. We hope that they can do that in New York, right? But I mean, listen, bro, it's setting up, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or whatever, but it's setting up to be, civil war once again.
We need to get rid of the electoral college, period.
Yeah, and I saw somebody say, speaking of Civil War, like we wouldn't have had this if all the Southerners hadn't been pardoned. All the it wouldn't even been a situation, because
Not only were they pardoned, they were paid. They were reimbursed.
Yeah,
reimbursed. So, and now, I mean, we all come from the Missouri, Kansas area. You see, they are sending more. You close enough, close enough. You went to school in Missouri.
I know you spent a lot of time in Missouri.
Yeah, you spent a lot. You made your money in Missouri. So you see where now they're trying to add more FBI agents to bolster federal agents, federal law enforcement in the state of Missouri.
Missouri's always been an interesting state, because you have the two urban centers on both sides of the state, and everyone else outside the state, outside of those few counties, they absolutely hate the people that live in the cities. And so rural Missouri hates, that's Kansas City and St. Louis, for some reason, are like two of the only cities in the country that the state controls, like their police force and stuff like that, which is it's always I never understood why that is.
I don't know either, but it's because enough of the people in those urban areas don't actually vote, so they're not swinging as big a stick as some of the other big cities with big Democratic, populations. So, I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure either. Somebody told me it went back to the mob days in the early 1900s, like because KC and St. Louis was both big into mob activities, and they thought
Mhm.
that a lot of the law enforcement are, were mobsters basically, but
Hmm.
I don't know. So
Corrupt.
yeah,
But I
corrupt.
mean, but is that not the case in a lot of cities?
Right, right. I mean, and growing up in Kansas City, it's just Kansas City, Missouri didn't have control of their police. Kansas City, Missouri didn't have control of their schools, and so you have people from BFE, Missouri, basically having more say on what goes on in that city than the actual residents, and that's why Missouri's just always been an interesting state to me.
Well, I mean, it's representative of what the U.S. is, right? You know, you got all the high urban centers that, are outweighed by these small. Look at Texas. You got Dallas, you got Houston, somewhat San Antonio,
Austin.
maybe Austin, right? But all those rural areas, they hate the city.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's always those dog whistles, right? When they say crime. Did you hear when he was talking about we're going to go into Chicago and, the old black ladies, they say they want us to come in. They're begging. They're wearing red hats. They're so beautiful. Shut up, man, with your lying ass.
I
Shut
was
up.
like, who are these ladies, sir?
Right,
Who?
wearing red hats.
What
Yeah,
was
that's the
what was what was their name?
Chicago Bulls, buddy.
What was the
Yeah,
chick? What was the chicks? One of them died. Diamond and
Silk.
Silk and Diamond. I can't remember which one passed away, right? But Silk and Diamond. He talking about Silk and Diamond.
Oh,
Those are the old ladies. Those are the old black ladies. He talking about the beautiful. They was the worst. Silk and Diamond. That was such a minstrel show right there.
yeah, yeah, it was. He said something about. I mean, it's. I don't know. Nobody ever calls him on the stuff that he says. Like, verify this. He's like, I had Democratic people, Democratic lawmakers in DC calling me, thanking me. I feel so safe in DC now. I'm like, come on, man. Come on, man.
So now
Name names.
he's battling with Frat. He's battling with Wes Moore, the governor of
Yeah,
Maryland.
from Maryland. Yeah.
Because they're talking about Baltimore, and he was just like, "Well, look, you want to come walk the streets, come do that, but you don't." I'm paraphrasing. He was like, "You don't want to walk, so we can get you a golf cart."
Right.
So then Trump was like, "Okay, you want to talk all that noise? How about I just hold back those funds for that bridge that y'all need fixed?"
Hmm.
Mm.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of spiteful stuff. That doesn't just hurt Baltimore. That's the port that a lot of goods that come into the US come in through,
Right. But
Shout
also
out
Congress
season
is
2 of The
supposed to be your
Wire,
But he don't care about
but
that because if he cared about that, these tariffs wouldn't be
That's
killing us
what I'm
like they
saying.
are.
Exactly.
right.
Yeah.
But either way, Congress is the one supposed to be controlling the purse strings, not him.
Yeah,
Should be.
should
Yeah.
be,
Oh,
should be. But for whatever reason, his influence over the MAGA crowd has them shook.
it's like a cult.
Very much so. Very much so. And Lab and I kind of hinted on it, last week when we were debating, not last week with the last show. There's not an equivalent on the Democratic side. The Democrats, they don't want, like, what's his name? The guy that's running for mayor in New York. Um
Mondami or
Mondale,
something. Yeah.
right? So he's on the extreme side, right? And you got them trying to basically sabotage him because they want to keep it corporate. They want to keep, the status quo in the party. The status quo in the Republican side, right? The George Bush and them, yeah, they weren't for black people 100%, not even close, right? But they were somewhat reasonable and somewhat willing to stay within the guidelines somewhat. I mean, Glitch O'Connell and them, they stole that Supreme Court seat from Obama, right? So yeah, they were willing to, do what they got to do to maintain power. But I don't think anybody thought they would go this far. Well, they did. Kamala tried to tell them that, this would happen, right? But where's that side that's willing to go just as ballistic, just as nuclear on the Democratic side? And why is the status quo, why is the corporate Democratic side not willing to embrace that, to get more aggressive, to combat these things?
Because like you said, the status quo is the status quo. People are
Mhm.
comfortable, and realistically, you know, a lot of times Republicans are supposed to be the constitutionalists, right? Or the people that abide by the Constitution. But the Democrats, when it comes to electing and how the offices and are run and stuff like that, they are more on the constitutionalist side because they believe in ideals, right? It should work this way. It's supposed to work this way, and they're not willing to deviate from that. A lot of them are still too idealistic.
Yeah, but also they just need to get out of there. Like
No,
all
yeah,
of them that have been
mm-hmm.
in there forever, we need term limits. Like, and they're benefiting.
Yeah,
Let's not forget
yep,
that.
mm-hmm.
They're not struggling. They're not
No,
losing their jobs. They got money. They got
right.
investments. They got people that owe them favors. They're all sitting pretty. So even when the fallout comes, as long as they got that nice fence up around their house, they should be okay.
Yeah. Well, I find it funny, and I'm being sarcastic when I say funny, that this is really a test run. They're going to find a way to say that there's crime, say that there are riots that need control, and what we're going to see is National Guard outside of polling precincts, making it even harder for people to vote, right? Making it harder for people to protest. He just signed an executive order. I think he tried this. I don't know if he signed it or he talked about doing it, where they outlaw, burning the flag. I'm not, what's burning the flag really,
Right. Yeah.
but if we in the country of freedom of speech, people have the right to do so,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it is, to last point, him placating to his base. But I think at this point, he don't even really need to. Well, he does. He does need to placate to his base, because as long as he is proven to them that we, meaning the Republicans, meaning MAGA, we are protecting our way of life, meaning we are ensuring our survival. That's what it's about. That's what all this comes down to. That's why they went after the abortion. That's why they're going after the court system, right? Because they knew, okay, listen, that's why they're trying to get rid of the immigrants. That's why they're trying to lock us up, because they're like, look, as much as we can do to constrain them, we extend our ability to survive and to maintain power and to be on top. And I don't know if this will be able to be reversed. And we're no different than these countries that they talk about. We're no different than these. We're not going to be any different than these countries that they talk about. Well, listen,
Mm-hmm.
there's no democracy there. When have you heard about democracy in the US lately?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. We're on the slippery slope of what they call it. What's the name of it? What do they say? It's authoritarianism or
Authoritarianism,
yeah, you know. So
totalitarian. I can't say it,
yeah,
but
exactly. I wasn't gonna try that one.
dictatorship. Yeah.
Right, dictatorship. Right, right. So
I
it's
mean, but they like the theatrics too. His fan base likes the theatrics
mhm.
because they don't read. So all they getting is highlights, and the highlight reel is what's keeping them engaged because they don't know what's really going on. So he's got to keep some theatrics going to keep their talking points going.
And I think, but we can't say it's just them though that doesn't read though,
Right, 100%.
because there are plenty of our young people that,
Old too, so
right, but there are plenty of people, you're right, but it's disheartening because the young people, at least our age group, there's enough to try to balance it out.
Hmm.
But with these youngsters, what I see is they're getting their information from TikTok, from YouTube, and there's no, okay, how am I fact checking this? How am I fact checking this information? Am I getting research based information, right? Am I getting it from credible journalistic sites, right? Journalistic a word. You know what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
it is. Yeah.
Credible journalistic
You
site,
add it to the dictionary. They added
right?
a bunch of
Yeah,
different
right.
words. Yeah.
Am I depending on credible journalism? That works, right? So, and then what happens is these people dig their heels in and you can't even really reason with them.
Yeah.
So that's how you reach the Kamala's just as bad as Trump. That's
Hmm.
when you get the inaction. That's when you get the apathy when it comes to voting. Now, we've talked in the past, Kamala was problematic in some ways, right? We've talked in the past about how I can see how um, if you live in certain communities and no matter what party is in office, you don't see a change, how that can make you apathetic towards voting. I get that. I get that. But that's where I blame the Democrats. I could blame them for a lot, but their ability to message to people of how they are positively impacting their life in a way that they can see it in a tangible way. They dropped the ball on that, and this is where we are. See, the Republicans, they had an easy job. All they had to do was say, listen, we're gonna get rid of the Mexicans and we're gonna lock up the N-words. That's all they had to do. You know what I mean? The Democrats had to take the ball a little bit further, and they didn't do it. And probably because they depended on people that looked like them, meaning white people,
Hmm.
to craft the messaging, right? They depended on, they gave money to white media outlets and they neglected or gave very little to black media outlets
Right.
who could frame the message and put it out there to where the right people could understand. They didn't pay the grassroots activists to could say, hey, listen, I know y'all trust me. Let me explain to you why you should. And it was a monumental mistake.
Well, I think the other part of that too is because that's a huge part, but the other part is that I think the Democrats fail to take any personal responsibility over the failures that they've had over the years. And so it's like if you keep saying, well, it's all the Republicans' fault, well, some places that, have, poverty and issues, and like you said, they haven't seen any change with Republicans or Democrats, you got to take some responsibility over how, we're not a perfect party, but these are the things we're trying to change. This is the way that we're trying to grow and move forward. But they never really did that. They're just like, you should vote for us. Or if you don't vote for us, you're not black. Okay. You see how that
Right.
worked out. So
That's funny. Now I can laugh at that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
I can laugh at that. So I don't know, man. I don't want to feel hopeless, but I think that it's going to take a serious effort
Hmm.
and an acceleration and an amplification of messaging to get people out to overcome the cheating and the downright dastardly ways of the Republican Party for us to overcome that. Um, they're going to do whatever they can. It's what they built to do, right? Lie, steal, cheat, destroy. That's what they do. But we have to have the courage and the conviction to not only do what we do, right? But it takes conviction to talk to some of these motherfuckers who's these conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. I say, yeah, we got to be
It does. I got
uncomfortable.
some in my
Mhm.
family, and I'm just like, dog, I can't even stand talking to you no more.
Yeah.
Because the thing
bring them on
about
the show.
conspiracy theorists is that the more you try to reason with them, the more they dig their heels in because they don't want to. I can't be wrong. I can't be wrong.
Sometimes when I'm arguing with them, instead of trying to reason with them, I just keep asking them for examples. I'm like, okay, Kamala's, the same as Trump. How? In what ways? Okay. what do you know about her policy? This. And a lot of times you get to a point where they run out of talking points because they've only read skimmed the top and they don't know any of the details. And so once they run out of steam, then you're just like, see, you're really not talking about anything, which most of them aren't. So like goes back to people not reading. And
You
so
must not have
if I
ever
don't
dealt
talk
with
about
dumb
stuff,
people a lot. You must not have dealt with what you have because of your profession. But
Yeah.
the thing
all I
about
do all day.
the thing about dumb people, and yes, I'm calling them dumb, when you point out the flaws in their logic, there is no, oh man, yeah, you're right. It's usually either they dig their heels in or they become enraged, right?
Hmm.
Because they feel bad because they know like, well, damn, I am kind of stupid right now, right? So it
Mhm.
goes to rage and intimidation. Well, let me get you off of me because right now you got me pinned in the corner intellectually. So I need to get you now. I just want you to shut the fuck up and get away from me.
Hmm.
That's my favorite because that's what I'm
See,
gonna
I don't
laugh.
have a lot of tolerance for silly shit, so I can't waste time with that, and it's sad. But we're gonna
Hmm.
have to though.
No, we
No,
got to
we're gonna
start getting
have
them
to.
younger. We got to start getting them in the schools, explaining how voting works, explain how dividing votes works, explain how district districting works, and all of that stuff. Because if they don't understand it as they're younger, when they bump into somebody who's trying to get them on board with their conspiracy theory or all this other stuff, they don't have any information to counter it. They don't have any like knowledge to really just say, hey, well, that doesn't really make sense because this they're like unarmed when they bump into the people who are trying to convince them that the Republicans are right and the people that are trying to convince them that these conspiracy theories. And I think that's all by design. Our schools are terrible by design. We got a bunch of C students teaching
Running the country.
F students, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. So, like, why are we not teaching these kids how to write and read in cursive when there's so many documents that are written in cursive? Now they just can't read them. You can't read the original, like, Constitution and stuff. Like, how? But they just
Listen,
the
listen. You know
slow
what?
dumbing down of society.
They got it now where you can sit there, you can take a picture of it.
Yeah.
If I can go to India and take a picture of some shit in Hindi, right, and have that translated to me, that's what these
In
kids.
real time. In real time too.
That's what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
then put it in the chat GPT and figure it out. That's what they're gonna do.
Not
The
figured
only
out,
people
be
worse
told
than
what to think.
the only people that's worse than the conspiracy theorists that we dealing with is those MAGA motherfuckers. I
That's
have arguments with them and they get mad and then you really want to punch them in their face. Most of them are like older white men. Like I remember I got into it with one. I was in Charlotte when we recorded live in Charlotte. I got into it one, and he got brolic, and I finally had to give him that look. He was like, he's just uneducated. I said, "Man, who the fuck you talking to?"
Right.
Like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. I had to really take it to the streets on him because we
Hmm.
start poking holes in the lot. And he was like, "You're probably you probably." He started talking about eggs or some shit. You know what I'm saying? So when they start bringing
Yeah.
up
And guess
nonsense,
what? Eggs still high. So
in addition to other stuff, because of
in
the
addition to other stuff, right. Yeah.
right. So yeah,
not. I don't know. I tell people all the time, I get paid to argue. I'm not about to argue with you for free.
listen, I don't debate people. You want to know my opinion? Subscribe to the Man Listen Show. For real. You remember I used to go
Mhm.
back and forth with people on my social media and stuff.
Oh, I used to. I got
I ain't
so
no
tired of
man.
that.
Go to the Man Listen Show. You can see how I feel about something. Leave something in the comments. Help us with the algorithm.
Right. I'll argue you in the comments all day.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with it. You can help me. You can help me get some engagement. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, but anyway, I think we talked about enough, man. Make sure you go to our Facebook or Instagram. Yeah, leave a comment, especially you MAGA folks. Like we want to hear from y'all. Yeah, me and Enrique got time. Lav ain't gonna do it, but me and
Nah, I
me,
ain't got that,
me and
Listen,
Enrique got
pour
time.
myself a drink, have a good old time
I'm not
responding.
money bag, yo. I don't got time today. You know what I'm saying? So,
I remember back in the day when Enrique and I was blogging for this one blog site that shall not be named because it's no longer up. Wasted all that time writing for them, and it's no longer on the internet. But
You feel
anyway,
some type of way?
yeah, I
You
feel some
feel
type
some
of way
type
about it.
it's got it's archived somewhere, right? So
I tried to find it,
yeah.
motherfucker that was in charge was like, whatever. So Anyway, I wish I could. Some of the things I would like to put back. That was a good impersonation, huh? Anyway, make sure you go to our social media, y'all. Leave a comment and tell everybody about the Blackest Radio Show on the internet, the Man Listen Show. I'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Out to see.